we got to bake challah together. It was a beautiful, glorious evening, 400 women, but a little hectic. So today, I wanted to welcome you in and just show you quickly the steps so that you can continue to bake your own challah. So if you have your card that you got that evening, it's a smaller recipe than I'm doing today. The recipe I'm doing today is enough to make a bracha on. But remember, the principles are the same, and that's what we're trying to get to today. So the first thing we're going to do is proof our yeast. We're going to take our water, and here I have the large amount of water, room temperature. This water is room temperature. Now we're going to take a little bit of warm water, and that's where we're going to proof our yeast. So I have half a cup of warm water, and I pour in my pre-measured 3 tablespoons of yeast. Now what activates the yeast are 2 things. One is just being in the air, the warm water. It's not boiling, but it's hot to the touch. And then some sugar. So my pre-measured cup of sugar, I sprinkle a little bit of it into the yeast so that the yeast can get activated, and the rest of it I'm just going to pour into the bowl. Now that we have our water and our yeast and a little bit of sugar, we're going to mix this a little bit and then put it on the side to proof. One thing that you don't want to do is put your salt directly in contact with your yeast, but otherwise your yeast should be good to go. So here's our half a cup of water, our yeast, and a little sugar, and we'll leave it there and see what happens. While our yeast is proofing, we can add the rest of the ingredients into our bowl. We have our oil, we have our salt. I like to use kosher salt. I think it gives a great flavor. And lastly, we have our eggs. The eggs are checked to make sure that there's no blood and they're kosher, and they're ready to go in. We started off with half a cup, but our yeast is growing already. It's activated, and if you look into the bowl, you'll see that it's bubbling and growing, and now we know that this challah will rise. Once upon a time, when using fresh yeast, this was very important. Our yeast today is a lot more durable, lasts a lot longer, but we still proof the yeast because we want to make sure that our dough is going to rise. So here we have our final ingredient, our flour, and so far we've put in water, yeast, sugar, oil, eggs, salt, and our final and 7th ingredient is flour. There are 7 ingredients in our challah dough corresponding to the 7th day of the week, Shabbat. My flour is measured out, and like I said, this is enough flour that we can make a bracha on one dough. It's about 5 pounds of flour. You can use any kind of flour, but I like to use bread flour, and there's lots of bread flour that's readily available. Gold's, Pillsbury, Hecker's. My personal favorite is King Arthur flour, but any bread flour should do. We're going to add in about 1/3 of the flour on top, sort of eyeball it, just a little bit of flour. And our growing yeast, that's now almost at a cup, is ready to go in. I know that it won't come in direct contact with the salt anymore, and we know that it's active and ready to go in, and in goes our yeast. To start, you might want to mix with your spoon, and we're just trying to incorporate all of the ingredients together. Doesn't matter if they're lumps or bumps, you just want all of our 7 ingredients to be combined together. When it's well combined in, we're ready to add in our next 1/3 of flour. And again, you're putting in about half of your flour that you have left, and you can get that flour into the bowl. And again, you can keep mixing with your spoon until it's well incorporated. See that the dough is getting a little stiffer, a little more difficult to mix with a spoon, and this is when we go to knead with our hands. About half more of my flour that I have here. I'm going to make sure that my hands are well floured. And I start to mix in from the outside in using the palm of my hand. And that's just the technique, from the outside in using the palm of my hand. I like to use one hand so that I can keep my other hand free. And if you rotate the bowl, it makes it just a little bit easier. But here we go. And as you see, the dough is starting to form, clean away from the side of the bowl and form into a dough. From the outside in, using the palm of your hand. Now the goal is to get a clean bowl and a smooth ball. This dough is still pretty sticky, but if I take a little flour and I rub it on, this dough will come off and make it a little easier to knead it. I'm going to add in just a little more flour, and now I add the flour slowly. I don't want it to be too much, and here I go kneading. You want to make sure that all of the flour is well incorporated and your dough is soft and smooth, and it's the palm of your hand that you're using. That's the strongest part of your hand to get it nice and smooth. We're almost done. Our dough is just about ready and smooth. And there we have a beautiful dough. It's ready. We want to let it rise. Ideally, you want it to double in size, which, depending on the heat in your kitchen or how warm it is, could take anywhere from 1 to 3 hours. I like to cover my dough with a cloth and put it in the warmest spot in the kitchen to let it rise. Okay, so our challah dough has been rising for about an hour and a half. And you see how it's doubled in size. And now we have the opportunity to make the bracha and shape our challah. So we're going to just punch it down. And I'm going to make the bracha. Of course, at that moment of making the bracha, it's an opportunity for personal prayer and to pray for all the things that we want and need. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lahafrish challah. Hareisu challah. This is the challah piece. Now we pray. Put this on the side to be burned. And now we can shape our challah. Lots of shapes that you could do, and I'll just show you one quick basic braid. And here we go. And as we're braiding it, it's just the extreme right, and we're just going over, under, over. So over, under, over. The extreme right, over, under, over. You can tuck the ends under, or if you'd like, you can cut off the end, tuck it under, and take your extra piece and put it underneath, and it gives you a really nice elevated shape. But there's your challah, braided and ready to go into the oven. An onion challah, you just have freshly chopped onions, and add a little oil, a little bit of salt, and then you can just put it underneath your challah. Place your challah on top. Then we're just going to egg our challah. This is just a plain whole egg, beaten. And your oven to 350. And once your challah has risen and doubled in size, you're going to put the challah in for about 30 to 45 minutes till it's golden brown. Remember, if you're in your kitchen baking challah and you have a question, you can always email the challah hotline, moraleah@chabadstanford.org. That's MORAHLEAH @chabadstanford.org. Happy baking!